Hello and welcome to this series of videos on how to produce instructional videos. My name is John Mitchell. When you start thinking about producing an instructional video, the first thing you're going to want to think about is what you're going to cover and the script that you're going to need in order to cover those ideas or those thoughts that you want to portray to your students. So the first thing you're going to want to do is think about your script writing and how you want to, what sorts of words, what sorts of language you want to use when you're creating your instructional video. There are some important factors to keep in mind when you're getting ready to write your script for your instructional videos. The first thing you want to do is prepare. You can't over-prepare for these videos. You want to prepare. It is important to have a good idea of what you're going to say before you go on camera. That will keep you from stuttering using words like or you know or like. You want to make sure that you are prepared for your video way in advance and that you have gone over the material several times before you press the record button. The next thing you want to think about is that you want to make sure that your video is very conversational. You do not want to sound robotic or sound like you are reading a script. You want to talk as you would in the classroom. Many of you have lots of experience in the classroom talking with students. You want to talk as if you are in a room with them when you're making a video. You want to make it a very conversational video. You don't want to use very robotic words. You want to make sure it's conversational. All right, the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure you use transitions, just as I did there. Say the next thing you want to do. If you're in a classroom talking with students, you're going to say next. You're going to say moving on or moving forward or let's take a look back. You want to make sure you're using those transitions because it's natural in conversation to use those transitional words. So make sure you're using those words as you work through your material. Next or first, second, third, last. Make sure you're giving those triggers to students so that they know what is coming up and they know where they stand as far as your instructional material that you're going through, just like you would in the classroom. Again, many of you have been in the classroom for many years and have a good idea about how to present information in the classroom. You want to use that same conversational style and tone when you're working through your videos. The next thing you can use is a teleprompter. Some of you will have access to this, some of you will not. It's not an essential item to have. In fact, sometimes teleprompters can make you seem more robotic than you want to be. If you do use a teleprompter, try not to read directly off the teleprompter. Remember, teleprompters are designed for news, marketing videos, those types of things where you want to get exact wording and exact phrasing correct. For example, a lot of times news anchors have not seen a story that they're about to read, so the teleprompter needs to give them the exact words, the exact phrasing that they need to use. You don't necessarily want to do that in your instructional videos because that can lead to you feeling robotic. It can lead to you feeling like you're just reading off the material. So if you do want to use a teleprompter to remind you of certain things that you need to say, that's good. But try to use the teleprompter to emphasize certain points, have certain reminders on it. You don't want to read things word for word off a teleprompter when you're making an instructional video because, again, that leads to that robotic tone where you're just reading over and over and it sounds very monotonous and you're just kind of going word after word and you're not really paying attention to what you're saying, right? So you want to make sure you're more conversational. Teleprompters can hurt that a little bit when you're trying to address. I mean, you wouldn't use a teleprompter in the classroom, right? You might have PowerPoint slides with reminders on of certain things you want to say. So the same thing applies here when you're making instructional videos. If you want to use a PowerPoint like I'm using to kind of help you remember what you want to cover, that's great. But try not to read word for word from your PowerPoint slide or from a teleprompter, just because that takes the conversational aspect out of your instructional video. All right? You are the content expert. You know the content that you're portraying to your students. While your technical side of things, right, we're creating videos. That's what we're learning in these videos. Make sure your expertise is related, just as you would in the classroom. That's where, again, teleprompters can hurt you because if they feel like you're reading your content, you're not going to feel like an expert. Whereas if you just have main points that you want to cover and you're kind of going in a conversational manner, you're using natural pauses, you're using natural transitions, you're going to seem more like a content expert. So make sure you're relaying that information to your students in the best way you know how. You've done this in the classroom for years. It's the same concept. You're just doing it in front of a camera instead of in front of a classroom. The last thing you want to make sure you do is that you're speaking clearly. You do not want to mumble like this. You don't want to talk like this because then students are going to get bored. And they're also not going to be able to understand you. If you need, use an external microphone like I'm using here. You can buy one that plugs directly into your computer for a relatively cheap price, or you may be able to check one out from your IT department, or the library may have some. Make sure you're easy to understand. Make sure, because students are sometimes going to watch this rather quickly, so you want to make sure you're getting your points across. And then also, when you speak clearly, it helps, and we'll go over this later in a later video, but when you speak clearly, it helps your closed captioning software be able to decipher what you are saying, and that saves you time, so you don't have to go back and edit your closed captioning. All your videos will need closed captioning to meet ADA standards, or for students that are hard of hearing. So you want to make sure that you're speaking clearly, so that the captioning tool can pick up your words, and it will save you time where you don't have to go back and edit. So make sure you're speaking clearly for a number of reasons. Also, when you speak clearly and confidently, it makes you seem more like a content expert, right? Because you have the knowledge that you need to portray to your students. Okay, so that's the first installment of these instructional videos. We're going to get into camera placement. We're going to get into, like I said, closed captioning in later videos, but this is just how you're preparing for your video when you're writing your script.